Just wait. I'd like to call to order the September 12th meeting. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Bruner, can I please have a roll call? It's not her name. Mrs. Kleinfeld. Can I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Eisenhart.
Here.
Mr. Hafner.
Here.
Mr. Hohenschel.
Here.
Mrs. Hune.
Here.
Mr. Reitnauer.
Here.
Mr. Sheets.
Mr. Sheets will not be able to make it this evening. He had, unfortunately, another commitment that allowed him to attend.
Mr. Stevens. Mrs. Walliser.
Here.
Mr. Wagner. 7 present.
So we have a couple of recognitions we'd like to start with this evening. Before I do that, to those in the audience, I do apologize for the delay in getting started here. We had an executive session that had to talk about some personnel matter as well as contractual issues. So I do apologize for the delay in coming out, and I appreciate your patience as we wait here to get started. That being said, we have a couple recognitions this evening we'd like to start with. The first one is a very generous donation. We have received a donation from a former graduate, Ryan Hinkle, who is going to be investing and has invested in the past on in STEM-related initiatives. He now is looking to, as he worked with Mr. Volker and his department, to set up an esports club in the middle school. So this, if you're not familiar, is a new and up-and-coming activity. It is actually at the collegiate level as well. And so we're kind of setting our stage, one of the few school districts in Berks County to be able to do this and offer this. And we thank Mr. Hinkle for his generous donation of the $26,000 to fund the program, to fund the computers, and everything needed to get that program up and running. Mr. Volker, would you like to add anything to that? Because I know you've been heavily involved.
No, I think you articulated the main points. It's not just the esports side that he's interested in supporting. It's also the STEM side of the house. So while we have these, I would say, supercomputers that we'll have in this room, they can also be used to do things like graphic design, CAD, video editing. So the robust things that your typical computers are not able to do, we'll have a lab of 12 computers that will be able to do those functions as well. So it's very exciting.
Thank you, Mr. Volker. Any questions on that?
Is he present?
He is not, unfortunately. He actually lives in New York City. So, yeah, but it's neat to be able to see a graduate and an alumni give back to the school district and support the school.
Wow.
We will make sure we follow up we've been in communications, but also as a thank you, and we're going to make sure that he is recognized throughout this process as well. Next up, we like to do our New Heights Award. I think everyone's familiar with the New Heights Award, but essentially it becomes our Employee of the Month. So tonight, I have the opportunity to recognize 2 of our wonderful employees that are sitting in the back, in the last row in the back of the. Maria, if you don't mind coming forward first. So if you don't mind, as Maria comes forward, I will take a moment and read why Maria was recognized. Congratulations. Maria is such an important and valuable part of the Brandon Heights Area School District team. She has not only took on registration and helped to make that a smoother process in the last year, she has also played a key role in the implementation of Infinite Campus for Brandywine Heights. Maria goes above and beyond every day in all aspects of her work and has been working tirelessly, putting in extra time to make the transition between East School and Infinite Campus successful. She has not only been helpful staff members learn Infinite Campus, but she has also been helping parents get acclimated to the system and log in properly. Her willingness to help whatever is needed is welcomed and always appreciated. Regardless of her workload, she comes into the office with a positive attitude and a smile on her face every day. Mr. Volker?
So I think what just actually happened over here very organically exemplifies Mrs. Winkler very much. She is reluctant to step forward and shine in the light. She likes to support others and let them be successful. But I can honestly tell you the work that she does behind the scenes, it is without a doubt one of the many reasons that we've been able to be successful with many of the initiatives that we've launched within the office. Not only does she support myself tremendously, and if you know me, you know I need a lot of support. She has been able to support everybody, not just in the office, but across the entire school district. I dare anybody to find a more positive person. I don't think there's a day where I've come to school grumpy and I left grumpy, because she is just one of those individuals. If you're ever having a bad day, I encourage you to give her a phone call, and she will turn that right around. And I can't express the value of people like her. She is one of a kind. We would never be where we are today without her, and I can't say enough positive things.
She's integral in the Education Foundation as well, sitting on the board. She was on the task force board. She's been involved in tons of parent activities, most recently sports boosters, and just a wonderful community member, as well as a tremendous asset to our office and to the district. So, huge congratulations. All right, next up we have Miss Lisa Turner. This is the New Heights Award that Lisa received. When I entered Lisa's classroom to assess a student, she was patiently helping students with writing, encouraging students and giving her positive feedback. The rest of the class was working on assignments on their iPads. They were sitting on the couches which provided an enjoyable and relaxing environment for students to work. The couches added a great hangout spot for learning. Lisa's always smiling, and her positive energy is contagious. If I could go back to third grade, I would want Mrs. Turner as my third grade teacher.
And I just, to add on to that, Mrs. Turner is such a loving and caring teacher. Her class motto is "Be kind." I was lucky enough on the first day, I still got it. Yep, we have our Be Kind bracelets. Mrs. Wallace was there also to help us. Every student in the class made their Be Kind bracelets within the first week, and it's something that Mrs. Turner truly lives by setting that example for students. Her students, current and former students, love visiting her. I think she is a solid reason why so many kids love to come to school every day, whether they're in her class or had her influence her. And I just want to thank you for that positivity and that great influence you have on our students.
No. I'm gonna say with that word positive is everything that surrounds you, Lisa. You've made such a positive influence on kids, on the school district, and you're starting as a nurse, now as a teacher. You just have really tremendously changed so many lives. And I thank you for everything you do on a daily basis. You give your heart, your soul, countless hours, I know. In this
Yeah. Sorry, you probably came from the
Next up, we have our students. So this is the first time the students get to present this year. All students have been able to come back to second year, so congratulations. This year, we have an opportunity to have 4 student reps that'll be here on a rotating basis based off of their active and busy lives, to be able to come and talk with the school board and share their experiences and some highlights of things that are happening at the different buildings. Obviously, as you can tell, we don't have an elementary rep. But what happens at the high school level is they split up the duties of the elementary school, connect with the elementary school, connect with Miss Kelly to report on some of the things that are happening at the elementary school. So that being said, we're going to kick it off. Who is up for the elementary school this one? Oh, Lauren, set you up. Well, and actually, as you start to present, do you mind just introducing yourself, what grade you're in, and then maybe some of the things that you're involved in?
Okay.
Just so this board gets to know you a little bit, since we're going to spend 9 meetings together.
I'm Lauren. I'm in 9th grade, and I'm involved in soccer, basketball, a lot of sports. For our elementary school report, the elementary school is off to a great start. The students have very quickly adapted to learning the building, playground, and making new friends. We are looking forward to celebrating Johnny Appleseed's birthday later this month by learning about his travels and about different types of apples. That's it for the elementary school.
Nice. All right. Should we ready? All right, we'll go to the intermediate middle school next.
Is it on? Okay. At the IS, we had family movie night last Friday on the soccer field. We watched the movie Hocus Pocus, and the Cub Scouts sold baked goods, and the cheerleaders sold hot dogs, popcorn, and soda. Fourth grade's UGI assembly is on September 27th. Race for Education is on October 7th. Fifth grade camp is October 12th through the 14th. And finally, the Halloween parade is on October 28th. Moving on to the middle school, we had the September 11th Remembrance ceremony on Friday, where the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders went to see Mrs. Sharon Mutter and Mrs. Sue Sibley get recognized for their years of service and commitment. They were presented the Commitment to Service Award by Allison Hoppus and Chase Wirt, the Student Council President and Vice President. Select chorus and band performed at the ceremony as well. We wrapped up our first Spirit Week with a red, white, and blue patriotic day on Friday. The Spirit Days on Tuesday through Thursday last week were Sports Jersey Day. The intermediate and middle school will have Picture Day on September 18th.
Jenna, do you just mind sharing a little bit about yourself,
Oh, sorry.
grade, and what some of the things you're involved in?
I'm Jenna Maioriello. I'm in 8th grade. I'm in soccer, track, and basketball, and I'm also in band.
Great job. Thank you.
Would you get a nameplate now for that?
We should, yeah, add it to the list. The credentials. All right, next up we have the high school. So Megan, Tatiana, who's taking the lead?
I'll go first.
Okay.
My name is Tatiana Ullman. I'm a senior. I'm involved in music groups and the BH Clothing Circle. High school began their first day of the new school year with a pep rally hosted by Student Council. Each grade competed in many games in which the seniors ultimately won. Mr. Janich and Mr. Ostrowski met with each grade level going over graduation requirements and rules for the school year. Seniors have started their senior meetings with their guidance counselors going over their plans after high school. Dual enrollment for college credits sponsored by Reading Area Community College and AP exam signups are approaching. Overall, the start of the school year has been going well for high school students. The homecoming dance will be on September 30th from 6:30 p.m. to 10 p.m. The homecoming game will be the following day. Marching band will be playing in the stands and chamber singers will sing the national anthem. Key Club, Chess Club, Art Club, Juggling Club, Drama Club, Knitting Club, Eco Action Club, along with a variety of other school clubs, have their first official meetings this week. The BH Clothing Circle collected 131 bags of clothing this past Saturday. Students will begin sorting through all of the clothing after school. The free clothing will be laid out in the high school cafeteria on November 12th from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m.
Great job. Thank you very much. Megan, last one.
I have sports for the high school, by the way, like just sports. There's a lot going on. My name is Megan Miller, and I play girls soccer. I'm involved in track and field, and I'm a class officer. I'm a junior. I forgot to mention.
Good job. Check.
Girls soccer is off to a great start after winning their first scrimmage against Harrisburg Christian, who is currently second in the district rankings, 6-2. The girls currently stand at 6th in the district ranking after the first 2 weeks of regular gameplay with a current record of 4 wins, 1 loss, and 1 tie. Boys soccer won the Big Spring Backyard Brawl tournament last weekend, and the team is currently 5-1 overall. And they have a game against Ole Valley tonight, which was supposed to start at 5:45, but it's now to start around 7, as I'm sure you've noticed the weather outside. And boys senior night is on October 10th. Topton Soccer Club Youth Night is on Saturday, September 17th for both the boys and girls soccer doubleheader at home against High Point Baptist. Girls tennis is currently 3-0, and their senior night is upcoming on September 26th. Girls volleyball is 3-1, and JV and varsity both have upcoming tournaments the weekend of the 24th for the Barron Classic at Mannheim Central. Girls field hockey is currently 2-2, and their senior day is set for October 6th. The cheer team has been doing an excellent job exciting Bullet Nation at all the home games these past weeks. Their senior night coincides with girls soccer senior night on October 4th, which is a Think Pink game for breast cancer awareness. And cheer youth night is on September 20th at the girls soccer game against Schuylkill Valley, where rec, middle school, and high school cheer will all come together in the spirit of Bullet Nation.
Great job. Thank you, Megan.
All right. Thank you, ladies. Moving on to public comment. Anyone? Hearing none, we'll move on to Board of Directors report. Can I get a motion in a second?
So moved. Eisenhart.
Second, right now.
Thank you. Ladies, thank you very much. Great job this evening. And I appreciate you guys taking lead from before and getting home to do your homework and other things that have to get done. So excellent job. Couple items that are in the board of directors report. It's actually a little bit longer than normal. We have the reading of the minutes from the last time we were together, which was August 15th. Any adjustments or corrections that need to be made to those meeting minutes? We have some first reading policies I'd like to just briefly discuss this evening. The first one is the medications policy. So some students have and parents have begin inquiring about CBD and administering or using CBD oil in the school setting, which led us to then start talking about medical marijuana and marijuana, knowing that that is obviously a hot topic within the state right now. So over the course of the summer, Mr. Pratt and I have evaluated that whole scenario and what is involved. So basically the understanding before we begin the policies is CBD oil is like any other over-the-counter drug, like Tylenol or aspirin or anything like that. When you get into marijuana or even medical marijuana, those are both, because we receive federal funds, we fall under the federal regulations. Those are drugs that are still considered illegal drugs. So regardless of what the state would do at this point in time, medical marijuana and marijuana are both considered illegal drugs. So that leads us then into our policies. Under the medications policy 210, which specifically talks about medication for students, when we reviewed the policies and I was talking to Mr. Pratt, I said, how are we going to identify this? And how are parents going to know? So essentially what we did is we just put in parentheses when we talk about the definitions of these items, examples, and we put in there CBD oil. And so we listed that as one of the non-prescription items, such as Tylenol, aspirin, those sort of things. So that's what the medication policy talks about and why that has been updated. Then we go into the controlled substances, which is a controlled substance, again, 200 sections. So that's for students. And we talk about in the definitions specifically marijuana and medical marijuana as prohibited substances. And then if you skip down to 351, which is drug and substance abuse, the 300 section policies are policies associated with our staff. That one, again, we put in there specifically examples of marijuana and medical marijuana as prohibited substances, just so that it is very clear and articulated in our policies of what is permissible and what is not permissible, since we're starting to get these questions. So before I move on, and let me just add that the drug and alcohol use and testing, the 351.1, just because it came under 351, we updated. Really is no functional changes to that. Just we added that as a operational review at the same time since we did 351. So before I get into the other ones, any questions about those? And Mr. Pratt, did I capture that correctly? Correct. Okay. So going into the other policies that are first readings for tonight, bullying and cyberbullying. The bullying policy that we received from PSBA, in my estimation, was very vague in terms of its definition. And so we started really evaluating other policies. Annually, the staff have to go through a bullying training. And so we went back and reviewed that training, what the definition for bullying is. And so we started pulling all those pieces together and put together a policy with a definition of bullying that we feel best captures what bullying is, how do we identify bullying, and what are those specific elements that are connected to bullying. So under that is inclusive of cyberbullying, and there's a whole bunch of examples and definitions that are connected to that. But that is really the crux of the changes that are in that policy, the updated definition of what bullying is and how we define bullying. And that's really important because often parents will come in and share a concern. It's a concern regardless of the incident, but will tag bullying onto the definition. And so we wanted to make sure that what we classify as bullying or cyberbullying is clearly defined. If it doesn't fall under bullying, as the policy defines it, it doesn't mean we're not going to handle it as a discipline issue or as a student issue. It just means that it may not fit under the official definition of what bullying is, which is more of a repeated occurrence. So that's what we wanted to clearly define in this, and that's what the definition of this policy is really gearing towards. Any questions on that one? Then we go on to school day. What we did under the school day policy, this is just a quick update on this one, is we added a clause in there that under the utilization of virtual instructional days is supported as a mechanism of continued instruction during these emergency closures following PDE guidelines. So basically all it was saying is we can use virtual instructional days as long as we're following PDE guidelines during emergencies for instructional purposes. So that's the clause that was in there. And the reason we put that in there, the segue to the next one, is under the emergency preparedness and response policy. That one is a new one recommended by PSBA. This is one that when you unpack it was very difficult to manage and work through. So in this emergency preparation policy, a lot of the changes that are in here are a reaction to the COVID pandemic. And so they put in here pieces that talk about the emergency instructional time that we just added into the instructional day policy. But it makes no sense to me that if we are ever in a situation when we would be looking at instructional time, and you said, where would you go to look at the possibility of using a virtual instructional time? Would you go to an emergency preparedness and response policy? You'd probably go to a school day policy. And so that's why we kind of lifted the language out of this emergency preparedness one and stuck it in the school day one. Going back to the emergency preparedness response one, that one does have that language in there. Their definitions and their examples of things we could include were mailed lesson plans, instruction via the television, or other. So obviously none of those apply, and it's completely outdated. So we struck all those and just kind of created our own definition of what that could look like. The other piece that's really important to note here is there's a lot of pieces in here about the mandated trainings we have to do, the fire drills, the evacuation drills, all those pieces. But the piece that they added in here, again, reaction pandemic, was specific thing, training or support of students washing their hands, but then pulled out the whole section on bomb threats. So we went back in, and the whole reason I found it is this policy is so messed up. I need to see what our old one is and do a side by side. And that's how I found like the whole bomb threats thing was removed. And then I looked at our bomb threat policy language in our previous policy, and that language was honestly outdated. And I'd been to a training through the BCIU that the FBI had done a couple of years ago. Went back to the BCIU, that language and those resources were up to date. So what we did is we took the bomb threat guidance that the Homeland Security and FBI created, and then lifted that text from that guidance and put it in the policy. Again, kind of the user end of me is saying, if there's a bomb threat or something, we're going to open a policy, we're going to look under search bomb threat, and I want it to be like what the FBI or Homeland Security is recommending to us. So that's what we did, and that's what's added to this policy. So hand washing is now included, as well as an updated bomb threat policy. So that a lot of moving parts of policies this meeting, but that's the nuts and bolts of what changed and why we made some of those adjustments. Any questions on those? All right. Second readings, there was really no additional information for second readings, so those stand as.
I'm sorry. I have a question about the emergency preparedness. There was discussions in there about bus evacuations.
Yes.
Can you explain or give us a description of what that would all entail? I mean, I know it's for, there have to be some kind of practice rounds or something like that.
Yeah, you have to do
When?
You have to do 2 bus evacuation drills in the course of the year. And the first one, I believe, is the first week of school. And then the second one is during the month of March. And so basically the students, if you remember, like when we were in school, you probably practice as well. You practice getting out of the school, using the emergency exit. And those are the things that are talked about in the drill with the students so that they know how to properly exit in case of emergency.
Am I mistaken that they said something about buses though?
Say that again.
Is there something in there about bus evacuations?
That is the bus evacuation.
That's a bus evacuation.
That is it. Yeah.
Okay.
The first week of school and in March, we have to do 2 of them.
So what What happens? Give me the description of what happens during that drill.
They talk to the students about how to use the emergency exit in the back, how to use the exit in the roof. That's an emergency exit in case something would happen. Basically, they're going through the possible exits in the building, in the bus, aside from that front one that they're always using.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions? So the next item on the agenda is our school district goals. So we are excited to present to you, and it should be in front of you, the new layout for the district goals. It's now on a legal site, because it's a little longer. So admittedly, we went from 4 columns, 4 core goals to 5. And we were back and forth of like, do we want to do this or not? And we decided to do this. The work that created this document this year really was driven from the strategic plan process. So back ourselves up 3. When was the last time we did this, Mr. Volker? 3 years ago?
4 years ago, the work started.
We pulled a community effort together, rebranded the school district, did a whole effort, and that's how we came up with this concept of let's create core goals. Let's have a Gantt chart of what we're going to get done in the next 3 years, and this is a refresh. So it was community involvement. We had a whole bunch of people here over the summer working through this process. We broke people up into 3 different groups. There's a second phase to this that's going to come into play, and that's going to be this fall. It's going to be more of an academic driven process, but this one was really more about community communications, and as well as we had to put a piece in there particularly about the training for our new staff called the induction program. So out of that whole process, we gleaned all those pieces and again put together another Gantt chart of what we want to get done in the next 3 years, and added an additional goal. So before it was having a focused on academics, the safe and supportive learning environment. We had a communications goal, and then we had one called operational efficiencies. So essentially those other ones are still there, except we took the communication goal and added one to the front called communication, and then the fourth column over, one called engagement. So now we have a communication goal. We have an academic, ensuring high quality instruction, academic goal. We have a safe and supportive learning environment in the blue. We have in the lighter color red, here's the engagement and connection goal. And then we have district facilities and resources, which is kind of that operational efficiencies one that we had before. So the reason we took the communications and broke it up into communications and engagement is as part of that discussion in the strategic plan process, this was the heavy emphasis on engagement. How do we better connect the student, the district K to 12, regardless of whether that's the music program or that's our athletic programs or that's our transitions between elementary and intermediate school, middle school and high school. All those pieces were points of reflection that people had, stakeholders had given us to say, we need to do a better job of this. We need to reflect on this. And a bunch of stories and different examples were provided. Likewise, there was a lot of emphasis on communication. How can we better improve our communication? And so we talked about the things that we've been able to do in the past with the new website and pushing and the new ability to put parent communications out there with social media connections, all those other things. But there's definitely a growing concern that we need to do a better job communicating. We can always improve ourselves. So we decided, let's make these 2 separate ones. And really that becomes the crux of why we have 5 goals for this iteration, is to say we need to focus really heavily on communication. We put now a whole communication plan together to better sync us. I think really what it comes down to is there's a lot of people trying hard. There's a lot of people working on communication, but it wasn't a succinct plan. And we had to pull people together to say, okay, let's just take a step back. Let's think about that end user experience, make sure we're communicating that up front. And let's also make sure that all these things are syncing together. And so that's really becomes the crux of the communication goal. The quality instruction one, that is a really important one as we continue to move forward with improving our programs, specifically our mathematics. And so some of the things that we put in place this year, and these are things that we've been talking about. It's things that we talked about the staff at the beginning of the school year. It's things we talked about in the June school board meeting when Mr. Volker got up and said, here's our plan. Let's kind of focus back in on what are we doing here. That intervention model, making sure that we have interventionists available and that we have a succinct intervention model K to 12. How are we supporting students? How are we ensuring that there are processes to capture students if they're struggling? That connects to then a grading policy. And so we started looking at the grading policy and formalized that throughout the school district. So 60% are summative, like projects or tests or quizzes, and then 40% is formative, like homework or check-ins throughout the day. That's also connected to then an opportunity for students to retest. So if 60% is a heavy part of a grade, and if a student isn't a good test taker, well, there's always projects. But if a student isn't a good test taker and they don't do well, let's make sure they have a second chance. Ultimately, our goal is to make sure students are learning, right? So as this whole idea of the intervention and capturing students if they're struggling, this idea of the grading policy, this idea of let's give students a second chance. And so they can retest, they can do a different project instead of testing, all with the idea that it's built to support students and make sure they understand the knowledge.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Sure.
The retesting, is
Yeah.
that supposed to be teacher directed or student directed? Like, is the student supposed to be like, hey, I bombed that test, like, can I retake it? Or is the teacher supposed to reach out to them? Like, what does that look like?
It's a student directed. It's optional for all students. So it's optional for the kid that got a 90% and wanted to get the 95, or it's
Okay.
optional for the kid that got a 60 and one is hoping for the 72.
There's like no cutoff percentage. It's just up to the student.
It's optional for the student. Yep.
And does
and
it have to be within like a certain amount of time, or could it be
It
like at the
is.
end of the marking period? You know, yeah.
There's
Okay,
a
that's what I was worried about.
2 week
Yeah.
window
2 week window.
that they have to be able to do it. 2 weeks, correct? Yeah. I just second guessed myself. 2 week window that they have to be able to talk with the teacher and say, I'm interested in doing this. And then the teacher then works with the student to make sure that they're doing some kind of purposeful way to relearn that material before they either retest or maybe they do a project instead of, it doesn't have to be the same test. It could be something different.
Okay.
And then what happens is whatever grade is the highest, that's the grade they get. It's not averaged. They get the higher of the grade.
Wow. Okay.
And really, the whole idea is let's make sure students are learning.
Mhm.
And so if they can prove that they have mastery and they can prove they got a better grade because they learned the content, then let's do it. And so that's why I was a strong advocate that if a kid gets a 90 and they wanted a 95, hey, if that means they learn more, why not? Like, why should that be just because they got a 90? Why is that a detriment to a kid that did not do as well?
Okay.
Again, the whole concept behind this is to help put in place the opportunities for kids to learn more effectively. And that connects to some other things that we're doing in kind of sidebar here, but that we also have been working, I see Mr. Donato here, we were working closely with the association and we put together a cell phone policy. We talked about that before, but the cell phone connectedness is let's make sure when students are in the class with the teacher that they're learning and they're not distracted by the phone. So that's why we have this new plan to, hey, when teachers are teaching, put the phone away. When kids are in the hallway or they're in study hall or at lunch, particularly in the middle school and high school, then let's teach them how to use that appropriately. And those are times when you can use it. But when a teacher's teaching, just like when you're at a job and you're expected to focus, put it away and let's make sure that, and there's a set sequence of events that happen if they don't, but it all goes to this idea of let's focus back on academics and let's make sure kids are gaining the knowledge that they're working. So that's really the crux there.
Quick follow-up question around these changed policies and procedures for grading and testing and homework and that kind of stuff. So have those been implemented or are they still in development?
They have all been implemented officially at the beginning of the year, and it's pushed out in a multitude of ways. One, at the beginning of the year, I should rewind. At the end of last school year, when we were developing these processes and procedures, that's kind of when we were doing the groundwork. By the end of last school year, we identified what we wanted to do moving forward. So we shared that information going into the summer, and we said, when you come back, we'll be officially unveiling this and diving in. Go have summer. When you come back, we'll talk about it more. So then we spoke about it in depth at the beginning of the year. And it's a bit of ongoing dialogues, specifically thinking about some of the retesting, which is a bit more of a burden, for some of the teachers when you think about their workload. Okay, well, now there's this other thing that we want to manage, but we philosophically believe so strongly in the growth model. It's not necessarily that our student learned it on day X. We care that they learned it, period. So making sure that they have additional opportunities. So we talked about the whole philosophy, and then we're talking about how we make sure that that's implemented consistently across a grade level or across a department, depending upon which building you're talking about. And that's just one of the multitude of things that we've been rolling out. Put it in the staff handbook, put it in the student handbook, rolling it out continually with our parents to make sure that they're aware of it, both at the open houses as well as the parent-teacher conferences that are upcoming. So making sure that that information is shared. So it is consistent across the board, which has been a big part of the conversations. We don't want things to really be different for the elementary versus the intermediate versus the middle, because if you're a parent and you have students in multiple buildings, we want there to be a consistent look and feel. So that's when we're talking about formative assessments and summative assessments, those percentages are the same across the district. Elementary is a little different because they're operating on more of a skills-based report card. And again, that goes all back into the communication and feedback to families to make sure that, as a parent, you know how your child is doing and what you can do with your child to help them develop along. A lot of the goals here are talking about a shared ownership in learning. So it's not just the teacher saying, I taught it, the students also have responsibilities to make sure that, they're taking the right actions to learn it. It's together working with the families. That's what enables our students to be most successful. So it's been rolled out to our staff. We're developing our own practices right now, really in the first quarter of the year, making sure that we strengthen that. It's ongoing communication to our families, making sure that everybody's up to speed, and it's uniform across the district, making sure that, once again, what they're hearing from Mr. Ginich is similar to what they're hearing from Ms. Kelly, Mr. Riggins, in the middle between the two.
Thank you. So hearing that, I mean, it sounds like pretty meaty, philosophical and strategic kind of change that we're driving through the curriculum. I would just ask that the board be apprised, maybe on a quarterly basis or periodically, with feedback from the staff. So, having had kids go through the system, there's, teachers who give extra credit because you brought in a can of green beans for the food drive.
Correct.
And there's other teachers who don't give extra credit for anything. Mm-hmm. And so I just use those examples as huge swing in testing and so philosophically, I'm sure our staff had opinions about this. And I know, Tom, that you're collaborative and you would have included a lot of that input. But I would think the rollout isn't just push it out there and, walk away. So I would just ask that as the year goes on, we get some feedback from the faculty and that we get some feedback from, I'm almost sad that the student reps aren't here. I would have loved to hear their perspective. What do you think of these changes? How has the communication and rollout been? Are your teachers buying in? Are you getting consistent feedback in all the different classes that you have? I'd like to hear more about it because to me, it feels big.
And it is
and
big.
Important.
And it is. And even talking about extra credit, that's a perfect example because we spoke at length about what's the whole purpose of extra credit. When we talk about a report card being, sharing with the family, the mastery of skills, how does extra credit fit into that view, into that communication? Does that then inflate a report card score, which might then inflate what a parent thinks a child's mastery level of skills are? So we spoke about that kind of at length. And as you can imagine, everyone has different philosophical approaches to this, but without putting anybody on the spot, I think this is one where our staff definitely recognizes the value and the philosophical approach. It comes down to implementation. And that's really where we are right now, this being year one. It is also a bit of a challenge that we're also implementing something else that's pretty big and heavy, which is the entire student information system. So we're giving everybody a little bit of grace as we're learning these new systems and implementing some of these new policies at the same time. But they are, as a department head is here, part of some of the ongoing conversations that we are having within a department. How do we best implement some of these things? So I can't say to you right now that, on first quarter, we're crushing it. I think we're implementing it to the best of everybody's ability right now. It has been added at the secondary level to every teacher's syllabus. So it's right there when they're rolling out their course to their students. This is how we do grading. This is what your opportunities are with retesting. It's all included within those documents.
I guess my concern is, especially at the secondary level, are we going to see really inflated grades for our really bright kids that are going to be determined that they want to get that 98, that 100%? And is that almost belittling our reputation as a district? Like, oh, okay, she was number one in the class at Brandywine, but they let them do retesting.
Sure.
Whereas other school districts don't, and those kids that are getting a 75 are getting a 75, and that's truly. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, is there any?
So I can.
Are you worried about like backlash with that?
I can't say I'm really worried about that, because as I talk to my colleagues across the county, a lot of school districts have started implementing models similar to this. Not everybody is there yet. A lot of people are still having the conversations. But I would say there are going to be more and more school districts that we all share the same philosophical approach, right? We want students to learn. And if it's that student that has the 95 that wants to get to the 97, it's not as easy as just, oh, I'm going to retake that. There's work that has to be done to earn the right to retest. And based on kind of what we've seen from some school districts that have gone before us, yes, there will always be students that try for that 100 on everything, right? I don't want to get in the way of a student that wants to do that. And I wouldn't say that the grades are inflated, because for me, the grade's all about the mastery of the content. If that student went back and mastered the content and was reassessed on a different assessment to show that they are now at that level, that's where that student
So
is.
it's a completely different test. It's not like they're taking the same test. So are the teachers having to come up with another test then?
And again, the conversations we're having with our teachers are you just going in and changing questions? So if I'm a math teacher, which I taught math and science, so it's a little bit easier for me to go black and white with math,
Right.
Exact same layout, different numbers, right?
Sure.
Or am I reassessing this student in a completely different way, right? Maybe it's a project-based assessment this second time around, because I know that this student struggles with X, Y, and Z, and they can better show me their mastery of skills in application. It's really becoming much more granular. And working with, our teachers, if they're like, I'm not sure how to best go about this. Oftentimes the resources that we have give you the ability to generate additional tests or additional versions of that test. And in that case, it's a lot easier. It's harder on some of the ELA side of the house, where there aren't necessarily different versions of that assessment.
That question, yeah.
So again, those are some of the waters that we are navigating right now.
And is it minimizing the importance of a test?
Yeah.
Because like, are kids saying like, oh, well, I get a second chance, I don't really need to study this time because
again,
2 days I can retake it again and maybe
Right.
get a 90 and I'll know better what's going to be on it and what the questions are going to be.
Sure. And again, all part of the conversations that we've had. For us, again, that's that preventative. You have to earn that
Right.
right.
That's what I'd like to know more of, like what exactly the stakes are to be able to retake it.
Yeah, and again, that's very difficult
Is
to
that like
answer in
teacher?
mass.
Is that
because-
teacher directed?
Yeah, well,
Or
yes
up
and
to each
no.
teacher.
It's
Okay.
consistency across a grade level. What that looks like at elementary for math is going to be very different than secondary ELA.
Sure.
Right. So earning that right. Our goal is to make sure that there are measures where the ownership has shifted to the student and the parent. So it's not just the responsibility of the teacher to say, like, all right, I'm going to do everything. You just come in and retake it because you didn't care the first time. Right. There's a shared ownership, and the students have to take that responsibility to earn the right, show that they've worked on it, and then come back for that reassessment. It's not a super easy just get this paper signed. There
Mhm.
are steps in place.
Okay, good.
Of course.
And I think the other piece of that is, if it was 5 years ago, we couldn't do this because we had a graduation that was by a ranking, and now that has been eliminated.
Okay.
And so now it's by a tiered system, like the collegiate level.
Okay.
And so it's not a chance. It's not someone like vying for
Yeah,
one
that's
or
what
two.
I was wondering. Okay, that makes sense.
So
then.
that's why it helps the conversation. Like, okay, let's what the student
Right.
knows.
Okay.
So again, this is all kind of taking a step back. This is all about how do we address academics in our school district? How do we focus and put the priority back on that, on the things that we're doing strategically to make our students more tuned and to help them be more successful. So again, kind of big level, the MTSS intervention model, how are students struggling, put universal screeners in place to capture that, reteach. We have the instructional time where we added the additional time at the high school and middle school. With that extra period, we adjusted the busing so they have that for that time to purposely work with those high school students that are struggling. Connected to then this conversation about grading and retesting, and all these pieces start to come together of strategic. I think what would you say? Heavy strategic initiatives. I think you called it, that we have put in place to really help purposefully make that shift for our students. So that's really the academic focus this year. Safe and supportive learning environments. We talked about this last meeting. Grant dollars to purchase that exterior door system, sensors, and security cameras. And then on the flip side, the mental health used to support a guidance counselor. And then we talked about the engagement side already. And then the final one is the enhance the district facilities and resources. And that's that new student information system we've been talking about. Not to belabor the point, but this has been a huge undertaking. And as you can see here, all the transitions to something new, those are all the pieces that when you change a student information system become touched by, because everything that becomes the brain and everything else is connected to it. So a lot of changes have been made through that process. That is the main parts of the goals. We will continue to work through this. I appreciate Alexis working with me. We had a chance to sit down about a week or two ago and go through this. We will do a mid-year goals update. And to your point, Mrs. Hune, I think that's a good point. I made a note. We can get some feedback, particularly about those initiatives that are the academic initiatives from our students and from our staff, to be able to share some of those at the mid-year goal section. Okay. Any questions on that? Great. I'll turn it to you for committee report. No, wait, sorry, one more. There's one more. PSBA officers. So this should be pretty easy. The PSBA is asking the school board to elect and put their vote behind certain officers. There's a president-elect. There's a vice president. That's a 1-year term. There are 2 candidates for a 3-year term for the insurance trust, and there are 2 candidates for a 2-year term for the school board secretary steering committee. There are no opposing candidates. You have 1 president, you have 1 vice president, you have 2 candidates for the trust, and you have 2 candidates for the steering committee. So unless someone wants to nominate, or if one of you would like to serve in one of these capacities, we can put your name on here. Otherwise, I guess the recommendation, what we have on here, is to elect or cast our vote behind these individuals.
Yes.
Now I'll turn it over to you.
Perfect. Thank you. Right, before we get into committee reports, I would just like to recognize and acknowledge the nice article that was in the Reading Eagle on August 21st of BCIU. And so nice job there. It was a nice article.
It was the 2022 Outstanding Community Partner, and the BCIU named Kevin Murphy, who is the individual that received the award for the Berks County Community Foundation. Mrs. Hugh was there as the vice president, so there you go. Do you have a copy of that?
I do.
Okay.
So that's why I couldn't find any papers in the area, right?
I got all sorts of text messages.
I'm sure. The floor is yours.
Well, and that frankly was my first agenda item, so thank you for that acknowledgement. And really, it's about Mr. Kevin Murphy. So good evening, everybody. If you look at the written report that I've submitted, this is the 8th annual
Outstanding Community Partner award that the BCI uses or has awarded. And Kevin Murphy has been the essentially founder and president of the Berks County Community Foundation, which is a philanthropic organization on behalf of the county since 1994, so more than a quarter of a century. So he's done tremendous work in Berks County and is very supportive of public education. So well-deserved recognition. Just a couple of other quick things from the most recent BCIU board meeting, which was Thursday, August 18th. Again, I'm referencing the document that I submitted. So state budget review, and again, just lots of good buzz around all the incremental funding that was put out there for public education. I tried to itemize the specific Brandywine stuff at the top of page 2. So by my count, and please correct me if I have it not quite right, Nicole, that we're well over 600,000 in incremental funding from the Ready to Learn block grant, the special ed funding, and the basic education funding. So again, if that's not quite right, I got that from spreadsheets that the IU did based on each of the 18 school districts. We spent some time reviewing changes to the PA School Code, Act 55 of 2022. Again, I just pulled out a couple of quick things. Apparently, we have to appoint a school safety and security coordinator. Maybe we already did that and I missed it.
We did do that, yeah.
Okay.
We did that at the June meeting. That is Mr. Ostrowski.
Okay, thank you. Yay for June meeting. I don't know, I must have been asleep at the wheel. Okay, great. And, you know, there's some other requirements there. I did note that there were 2 $100,000 grant applications, one for safety and security and one for mental health that were due at the end of August. So I hope that we had made those deadlines and gotten submissions, because we seem to have really good grant writers here and a really good track record of winning those things. So
So they're each actually, with the way that formulas all work out, $120,000 on each of those. And yes, we have submitted, and all of the required professional development itemized within Act 55 is being addressed. And Mr. Ostrowski is taking the lead along with Mr. Green as well.
fabulous. In addition, the board ratified some agreements and approved some agreements related to all those technology enhancements that Mr. Volker and his team have been working so hard on and that we just got a preview of on the goals document. I think that's all that I really wanted to point out, although hot off the press at today's noontime board officers meeting, there was the announcement, and this will roll out tomorrow, I think, to all the school districts and superintendents, but the Keeping Kids Safe Symposium, which is an annual event that the BCIU coordinates, again, on behalf of county school districts. It's scheduled for Tuesday, October 12th in the morning, like basically 8 in the morning till noontime. They're lining up some really good speakers and content. So for anybody interested in that domain, you may want to tickle your calendar, and more information is forthcoming.
Did they say what the theme was going to be this year?
Say that?
Did they say what the theme was going to be this year?
Yes, I have a sticky note. May
okay.
I loop back
I'll
to you?
I'll
It's
find
like
tomorrow, don't
buried
worry.
here. So
Yep.
yes, I do have a theme. I just can't find my little sticky note.
And I apologize, I misspoke. So what we started doing is we put those positions like Title IX coordinator, district safety committee on an annual basis. I thought it was at the June meeting. It's actually the December reorg meeting.
Oh, okay.
So Mr. Barnhart was recognized at that point as district school and safety administrator. So we will need to update that to Mr. Ostrowski. But that I knew we got into a system of making sure we didn't miss those things, and that's when we do it at the reorg.
Sounds good. That concludes my report. The next meeting is this coming Thursday night, the 15th.
Thank you very much. In the absence of Mr. Sheets, do you have anything to add to his report?
I do not. No, I'm not sure when the next BCTC meeting is.
Alrighty. Berks earned income tax.
So I have nothing to report except for the next scheduled meeting is September 29th.
Thank you. COLA, Mrs. Walliser.
We have our meeting tomorrow morning, and it's going to be the Pennsylvania Association of School Administrators that will be presenting.
And the floor is still yours for policy committee.
I think Mr. Pottinger does all of that.
Okay. Strategic planning and goals, Mrs. Eisenhart.
Nothing to report for our presentation.
I'm just gonna pass it over to you guys. Do the goals and the
The policy
policies.
review. Okay, next, someone would like to have that. Yeah.
Negotiations committee. Did Mr. Keys supply you with anything
There's some
additional?
information that's in there, just that the committee had met over the course of the summer to discuss some of the administrative hires that occurred during the time.
And building construction committee.
So some of the updates on the building construction committee. A lot of work has been done through that committee to get to the point tonight. Tonight in the next section, there's a discussion and consideration for approving some specific ESCO related projects. As additionally, we started really evaluating that whole process and started looking about what we want to do, some of those projects maybe internally. And so another item that's on the agenda tonight is to upgrade the lighting at the stadium out here to LED lighting. And when we evaluated that, we decided that we could do that as an internal district project versus doing it as a contracted service kind of through the ESCO project. So we're excited to get to this culmination. There's still some work to be done. We're still waiting for some moving parts, particularly around the stadium project and how do we want to allocate the funds and what's the vision going to look like and how do we make sure that we're achieving those goals. And so we're waiting for those pieces to come in. So it's kind of like the final phase to get there, but we are excited for this culmination of all the work and many meetings over the last, I think we've been meeting since December, January. Yeah, it's been a long process. Thank you to those that have served on that committee.
Alrighty. Any further board discussion, questions?
Just have an answer to Mr. Pottiger's question
you found
about the theme. So it's keeping kids safe and the theme is community care.
Thank you.
So more information forthcoming. I think it'll roll out tomorrow.
Thank you very much. Could I get a roll call, please?
Mrs. Eisenhart,
Yes.
Mr. Hefner,
Yes.
Mr. Hohenschildt,
Yes.
Mrs. Hune,
Yes.
Mr. Reitnauer,
Yes.
Mr. Stubitz,
Yes.
Mrs. Walliser,
Yes.
Mr. Wagner.
Yes.
8 yeas, motion passes.
All right, moving on to business and operations report. Could I get a motion and a second?
Motion right now.
Second, Walliser.
Thank you. Ms. Delgarico?
All right, good evening, everyone. So in the beginning of the business and operations report, we have the bills list that we have monthly through September 12th. And then item E, we have the financial reports through June 30th. Our audit is actually next week. So a lot of these numbers will change, especially the general fund piece as we're doing year-end accruals. But that's, as they are prior to being audited. Rachel and I are finishing up, making our entries and whatnot. And there's no budget transfers that will also change. It'll probably be on the next board meeting as far as budget transfers to kind of bring accounts full through June 30th. Then we move on to special education and pupil services. Item 1 is to approve an agreement with Therapy Source for speech language pathology services at an hourly rate of $78. And that is daily, so it's 180 days. Item 2 is to approve the increased staffing with pro staff for nursing services at a rate of $53. This is to help with our staffing shortage as far as nurses until we find replacements. And then item 3 is to approve the additional mandated one-on-one support for a student attending L-Line Opportunity School. That is a rate of $195 per day per the agreement attached. The next one, this is an annual one, is a tuition agreement with Hillside School for one of our students at an annual rate of $27,170. And the last one, item 5, is to ratify an agreement with LearnWell. They are providing instructional educational services for a student placed out of district. And then we get into facilities maintenance and kind of about it coming out of the construction committee and also what started last spring with the ESCO project. And I just want to point out this is subject to solicitor review and approval. We're going back and forth on some items, making some tweaks, but overall it's a pretty solid agreement. So this is to approve the agreement with Brewer Garrett, the ESCO company, to proceed with the replacement of the high school chiller, the recommissioning, and the multi-zone HVAC system, and also the high school theatrical and house lighting. Basically, these pieces were decided to get moving forward now. One, because of how long it takes to actually get the equipment, and then also the chiller is ESSER funded, so we're up against a timeline there. And then the high school theatrical and house lighting is an urgent need, so we can get that moving as soon as possible. So you'll see the breakdown there. The total is about $1.9 million. And again, some of this is ESSER funded. So then item number 2, this is one of the ECMs that was on the ESCO project, and we decided to reach out to contractors ourselves. We went back and forth in the construction committee meeting, and we ultimately decided to proceed with Musco Lighting. The final number is $211,788. This would include upgrading the existing we'll keep the wooden poles, but upgrade the lighting to LED. We'll also get a control link panel and all new electrical. So then item I, this is to approve the BCTC resolution stating that transportation will essentially come back to the sending district starting next year, 2023, 2024. They had previously provided transportation, and it was part of our overall cost. And that's all I have. Anybody has questions?
Any questions? Comments?
I just had a question. Is that $53 for the nurse? Is that what the actual school nurse would get paid? Or is that like, do they get a percentage out of that?
So that's what we're paying essentially our vendor.
Right.
So that's probably if that person, whatever their hourly rate is, plus taxes, plus if they get benefits.
Okay.
So that's what we're paying. What they get paid.
We're not sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything else? Can I get a roll call, please?
Mr. Hefner?
Yes.
Mr. Hohenschel?
Yes.
Mrs. Hume?
Yes.
Mr. Reitmiller?
Yes.
Mr. Stubitz? Mrs. Walliser?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Eisenberg?
Yes.
Mr. Wagaman?
Yes.
8 yeas, motion passes.
All right, superintendent report. Can I get a motion in a second?
Motion Walliser. Walliser number 2, would you like to?
Oh, right. We're spreading the wealth tonight. This is nice.
Yep.
Under the superintendent report, we have one item. It's actually a phenomenal success story, similar to the acknowledgement in the beginning of the day, which we had the Ryan Hinkle and the alumni giving us $23,000. This is also a really neat story. So it's the Luana and Ricky Kurtz Technical Career School Memorial Scholarship. This is going to be done posthumously. So when they pass away, they put money aside in their will to set this scholarship up. Luana went to Brandywine, and her husband Ricky went to Kutztown. So they're splitting their will and their wealth between the two school districts and have set up this scholarship. And really, the essence when they reached out to me was they wanted to create a scholarship to help students that are going into the technical education. And so that was really became the focus. We don't quite know what this scholarship is going to entail, but it's really directed towards helping a student be able to support their education for that first year to go and be able to engage in that type of schooling. So it's an awesome opportunity. It's an awesome gift and generous. I thought these two folks live in Florida and felt so compelled to give back to Brandywine, where they first had their roots many years ago. So it's just a really heartwarming, touching story to see that that's where they wanted to give their wealth back to the school district once they do pass. So some exciting news there. Really, and that's the only item on the superintendent report. So what will happen is we will create this grant. We will create the scholarship. Once you approve it this evening, it'll kind of sit on the books, and we'll make sure there's documentation to go along with this. So whenever that time may come, whoever the administrator might be at the time, know that was established and all the rules and regulations are connected to it at that time. Any questions on the superintendent report? There was one item, just as a note, there is an enrollment report section. Under the enrollment report, we added the pre-K numbers. We thought that'd be important for the board to know that since it's our own program now. It was auto-calculating correctly. In fact, Ms. Kleinfelter, not Bruner, talked about that earlier. today, or earlier when we set the agenda up, and we purposely didn't want to auto-calculate it, and for some reason it got tied into the formula. So sorry about that, but it is removed now. So if you look at it electronically right now, that 15 students will not show as a district population, because that district population really should be our K to 12 enrolled students.
All right. Hearing no other questions, can I get a roll call, please?
Mr. Hohenschel,
Yes.
Mrs. Hume,
Yes.
Mr. Reitnauer,
Yes.
Mr. Stevens,
Yes.
Mrs. Walliser,
Yes.
Mrs. Eisenhart,
Yes.
Mr. Hefner,
Yeah.
Mr. Wagaman.
Yes.
8 yeas, motion passes.
Okay, personnel report. Could I get a motion and a second?
So moved. Second. Eisenhower.
And Alexis. All right. Under personnel report this evening, we have a couple resignations. We have the individual that was our elementary school CAF recess aide is resigning. We also have the resignation of a substitute school nurse. We have a very special appointment to acknowledge this evening. Our recommendation for the athletic director after a pretty exhaustive search. We had 26 candidates apply. We did video reviews of the candidates. After the video reviews, we brought first round live interviews in, and then we did the second round interviews with the committee. The committee consisted of students, of school board members, of some of the coaching staff, someone from the Booster Club president, as well as some administrative staff. So not much anxiety there in front of all those folks, but it was a great process to get to the end goal. And so I am very happy to report and to recommend to this school board that Miss Sarah Sophie become the next athletic director for the Brandon Heights Area School District. She did a phenomenal job articulating all the knowledge she's gained in her assistant role the last year, as well as not just let's just keep the system rolling, but really a new vision for where we're headed with the department. And it was really her presentation and her vision that she did that really sold the committee of wow, she has a lot of insight and a lot of thoughts of where we want to move this program moving forward. So Sarah, great job with that process, and congratulations on being a recommended candidate. We also have the revised athletic staff and volunteer coaches that is on the list tonight, as well as the paid instructional non-athletic co-curricular. So we do an athletic co-curricular appointment as well as non-athletic. Tonight is the non-athletic ones. As you will see, there's some mixed positions in there between ones that are within the association contract as well as positions that are district positions, but those are all under that umbrella of non-athletic. And then finally, we have two mentors that we're asking the board for consideration this evening. Mrs. Mary Solenberger to be the mentor for the full-time long-term sub that's filling in for Spanish this year, as well as Miss Erin Davis, who is learning support teacher to support our new autistic support teacher, Mr. Troliner. That is the personnel report.
Questions, comments?
I have a question about, since this is kind of like little personnel things, at the elementary school, do you have somebody lined up for that, Miss Kelly, or for the recess and lunch aid? Sorry.
We sure do. She'll be added to the next.
Okay, good.
She's been coming in she was hired as a substitute, and actually talking to her today, she is willing to roll permanently.
Oh, good.
So she's there currently now.
Okay. And what about, I know this is a very hot topic, but what about the crossing guard?
So I do have some updates on that. I reached out to SOS. They do actually have some interest in that position. They just don't have anyone at this point that has committed to doing the job. But it was at least promising to see there were some people that were interested. We just don't have anyone right now.
I think this question has been answered before, but the person who's the crossing guard has to have a special certification. Is that true, or a something?
There's a training associated with it, but not necessarily
So we
certification.
can't just get like a bunch of concerned parents to stand there, or we can?
We could do it as on a volunteer
Yeah, not-
basis.
not a
They'd have
paid,
to go
but
through
like-
some of the training, but
Okay.
yeah, they could do it as a volunteer basis. Yes.
I didn't know if there was anything restricting that.
No, it could be done as a volunteer.
Okay, because there's a lot of concern there.
Yeah.
So
Luckily, our one crossing guard still continues to be our stronghold down at the Herman's intersection.
yeah,
He's
he
phenomenal.
deserves a gold star.
New
Yes, he
heights.
does.
There you go.
Yeah, I hope.
Maybe a
that-
badge.
Maybe bad. Only had the lime green vest.
Mr. Wagman, I have one other real quick question. So on the agenda, there's a verbal resignation. That seems a little bit unusual. Is there a reason why that it's not a written resignation?
I'm gonna address that as a executive session
Yeah,
after the meeting.
Yeah.
We'll have a brief executive session to
That's fine.
discuss that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing none, I get a roll call, please.
Mrs. Hume,
Yes.
Mr. Reitauer,
Yes.
Mr. Stevens,
Yes.
Mrs. Walliser,
Yes.
Mrs. Eisenhart,
Yes.
Mr. Hefner,
Yes.
Mr. Hohenschuld,
Yes.
Mr. Wagaman.
Yes.
8 yeas, motion passes.
Congratulations to our new athletic director. Is there any other business? Any other public comment?
I did make an announcement about the exec session at the beginning of the meeting.
Correct, and we will have one following the meeting as well. So can I get a motion and a second for adjournment? Motion.
Second.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Oh, yeah.
Why don't we just go right into
That was loud,
the
yeah.
office over here?